Thank you very much for joining us tonight for our local author event with local Quincy native author Holly Nichols. She is here to talk with us tonight about her new book, Modern Fashion Illustration. This is Holly's first book, but she is a longtime illustrator of fashion design. You can catch some of her work on her social media, as well as numerous fashion main staples in fashion, really. I know you've done work with Barney's and Saks as well. But we're very happy to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. I appreciate it. And I'm very excited to return in some capacity to my childhood library. It's a beautiful place. So we're very lucky to have it here in Quincy. And with that, I'm going to get into a bit of a presentation. Great. So my name is Holly Nichols. I grew up in Quincy. I went through the Quincy public school system and participated in the Quincy Art Association as a kid, both which certainly inspired me on my path today and through my youth. When I attended North Quincy High School, and at the time that I was there, they had a program that was known as the Renaissance Program, which allowed us, after our lunch period, to study and focus on a visual or performing arts of our choice. And that's the program that really solidified my belief in that I could be an artist when I grew up. I studied various methods through that program: drawing, fine art, digital media. It really exposed us to a lot of different mediums. And then from there, I attended Endicott College in Beverly as a studio art major. And that's where I discovered an art form that I came to know as fashion illustration. And I'm going to discuss today a bit about what fashion illustration has been in the past and then where it is today. And that leads to my book, which is called Modern Fashion Illustration. And it's a bit of a departure from what is typically known as fashion illustration. I also have a studio here in Quincy. Right now it's a private studio, but hopefully in the future we'll have some opportunity for more in-person events. So post-graduating in 2013 as an art student, I didn't really know what I was going to do. I took on some odd jobs and I was working in an education setting in Waltham. And I set up this Instagram account where I would just share my artwork, anything I had done. And I also took a bunch of work that I had done in college, and they were all these fashion oriented illustrations. And the account grew pretty rapidly. I didn't expect it to. And I've been lucky starting off quite rapidly then up until today to work with these incredible brands and talented people that I've always admired. And it was all thanks to social media. And I always tell people that doing what you like is far better than getting likes, because in the end, that's what really matters. This is just a little video of my process using, this is some paint over my markers in the fashion illustration I'm doing. I like to share videos. I like to open up about my process, which was really nice when I had this opportunity for the book, because I just kind of took everything that I had worked on and just laid out step by step from foundation up until the end of where I go to print it sometimes, of how I do all these. And it's just been a pleasure to share with the world. These are some examples of my work. So I love drawing color and beautiful women and women doing different things and inspiring scenes. I'm inspired a lot by places I travel, which has been a bit limited in the past year, but I am hopeful that my markers and I will get back on the road. Something I'm a huge believer into is accessible education, specifically in the arts. So I work frequently with Apple to bring these free workshops in places across the country. And we're able to demonstrate fashion illustration techniques as they apply to Apple products. In addition to that, I work with a lot of different venues to offer these for free. Part of the offerings that I share with my followers are these little free tutorials that I post every day to my feed. And they're little snippets of the work that I do. And it's great to connect with other artists and see what their process is like. And we kind of share tips and tricks back and forth with each other. And it's just like a wheel of inspiration. So it's great that in a year that has been so isolating, to still remain connected to all of these people. Probably all wondering what I was referring to. All right, so let's try this again. I will go back very quickly just through some visuals that we probably all missed. These are just some examples of my work, the color that I was talking about, the variety of women and who inspires me and where I'm inspired by, or what I'm inspired from. These are the educational classes I was talking about. And these are those quick little snippets. I think that's right where we left off. So that leads me to the opportunity I had with Modern Fashion Illustration. I was approached by a publisher who wanted to partner with me to, like I said, take these tutorials and tips that I had been sharing through my Instagram and social media and offer it in the form of a book. And it was right before all of these, the talks that I was having with them were right before the COVID crisis. So they're in New York and I'm in Boston, and we had all these plans to meet and go over everything that was going to be in the book and do all these, the shoots for all the content and all of that stuff. And then COVID hit, and it was kind of a scramble to make that all happen in my apartment. So I bought a bunch of camera equipment and lighting tools, and I got started working on the book. And it was a great opportunity in some sense, because I had all of this time and I was stuck at home, that I really got to focus in on this. And it gave me the time to dedicate that I needed to it, that I don't think I would have had if that weren't the case. So it was a blessing in some ways. And the book was published last month in April, and it's available at the Thomas Crean Public Library. So the book is, like I said, start to finish how I do all of my work, and it breaks down everything that goes into a fashion illustration, from tiny details to the overall look of everything. This is an example of a page where I discuss how exactly I sketch the lips, and then how I put it all together to make this face. And a lot of what I do can be thought of as a formula. So that's what you're seeing here on the right. Everything goes into something else. And that's a theme that's really popular in figure drawing too. But with fashion illustration, as I'll talk about, the portions all get a little bit exaggerated. And like, for example, her eyelashes are very long. And her chin is very pronounced. So things like that can get changed and stylized a bit. Also included in the book are these step-by-step tutorials. So it really walks you through exactly how I do everything. I get asked a lot, who is the book for? And even more so, do I need to be of a certain skill level artistically to make this work for me? And the answer is no. The book is for all ages and all skill levels, including complete beginner. I always encourage all readers and artists to go at their own pace, at a pace that works for them. It can take a week for you to go through all these, or it can take several months to go through them. It's really about just enjoying the creative process. The end of the book also, for people that might be intimidated by sketching these drawings from scratch, the end of the book contains coloring book pages and a template section that you can start there. Rather than work on the sketching itself, you can work on the coloring. So these are some of the templates that you'll find in the book of fashion figures. And we have a few fashion faces included too, because part of fashion illustration is can be a beauty illustration, which is more focused on the makeup look or the hair look. And we have these coloring book pages. And this doesn't apply to the copy that you're borrowing from the library itself, but if you have a copy that is yours, the pages were designed to be a stock that is absorbent of the specific type of marker that I use, which I'll also get into a bit. But the pages are meant to be colored on. That was important to me. I wanted them not to be too thin. I wanted them to be a texture that was good for absorbing different art materials. So before I continue, we also should get into what exactly is modern fashion illustration. And prior to what I would consider to be modern fashion illustration is fashion illustration itself traditionally is the visual communication of fashion design, garments, accessories, and more. It has been used as a tool by fashion illustrators, fashion designers for years, and flourished pre-photography, before they had cameras, to display the latest garments in advertisements. Designers would also showcase their latest work to clients, mostly privately in more couture settings, or use their sketches for technical purposes in the garment construction process. It is still in some capacity used in this way by fashion designers to communicate different ideas. But more recently, it's been used into an aesthetic purpose. So just purchasing these drawings to hang in your home or consume them specifically just because you like the look of it. So I define modern fashion illustration as the marriage of fashion and art consumed for enjoyment or aesthetic purposes. And I should say too that I myself am not a designer. I'm strictly an artist. And I like fashion illustration just because I enjoy fashion and art. And so that's kind of how I got into it. I can't sew a button if I wanted to. So the other things that define modern fashion illustration from what it has been in the past are some stylistic departures. Most notably are proportions. Fashion illustration, traditionally, if you were taught in a classroom setting, operates in a 9-head system, which means if you were to stack 9 heads one on top of each other, you'd have the figure's full height. I prefer typically to work on a 7 to 8 head system, which is something that you might be taught in a traditional figure drawing class. Fashion illustration also often depicts extremely tall, lean women, often in very unrealistic proportions. You'll see their legs like almost more than half of the size of their body, which is obviously not how people look in real life. I practice this style quite frequently in my work as a student in college, but my more current work features women of all statures and sizes, as my goal as an artist is to allow my audience to be able to relate to these women and see themselves in my drawings. The other departure is often subject. So traditionally, fashion art was very exclusive to a subject matter of just a figure in the clothes, maybe walking down a runway. I definitely sketch this quite a bit, but I also like to incorporate women in their natural environments. So you'll see a lot of drawings like this on the left here, of women in their pajamas with their hair thrown up in a bun, as I often am, just in their comfy clothes, relaxing at home. This woman is relaxing with her pet, reading a newspaper at night. So they're a lot less formal than they traditionally have been. These are examples of those stylistic and subject departures from what is traditionally known as fashion illustration. Tools of the trade. So the materials that I'm working with most frequently are what are called Copic markers. I love them quite a bit. You've probably seen them if you've ever gone to Michael's behind the counter. They're these really vibrant, and you'll see them behind me too if you're tuning into my stream. They're these really vibrant alcohol-based illustration markers. I've been collecting them for several years, and they're virtually indestructible. They have replaceable tips. So if you wear out the tip of the marker, you can replace that. And the ink is also refillable. So while they are a higher investment, they last quite a bit. I've had the same markers for over 10 years. I am often asked, will I need to invest in these tools to learn or follow the book? Absolutely not. The book, it teaches exactly how you draw fashion art, but this can be practiced with any tool that's accessible to you. And that can mean a crayon, a marker, or just a pencil and paper. The book does explore techniques specific to blending with illustration markers, but there are also dozens of budget-friendly options. These might include Prismacolor, touch markers, Ohuhu markers, and Blick has a great student-grade illustration marker. This is an example from the book of just a color guide that I go through, and it shows you how to apply these colors to specific things, so specific skin tones and specific hair colors. And if you do have the Copic color system, there are Copic codes listed under each of these items, so you can match the Copic colors to the practice that you're studying in the book. So what you just saw there was the process of me using these markers. They're very blendable. They're really fun to work with, but you can use anything you have at home. Fashion illustration isn't just about clothes. So my style of art and fashion illustration is a dispatch from reality. Similar to most types of illustration, that when I'm working with something, I think, how can I embellish this, or how can I exaggerate this? A way I do this is with hair. Illustrating hair with intent is a great way to add expression and movement to your work. The hair sketching process is included in chapter 1 of the book. I love sketching hair. I've worked with a bunch of clients where it's been focused on the hair itself, and I just find that there's so much movement in it. And in some ways, when a woman is coming down the runway, her hair is kind of mimicking the flow of the gown she's wearing or the garment she's wearing. So I like to have the hair complement what is being worn. And you'll find a detailed process in the book of different textures and hairstyles and how to sketch them. Also included in the book are techniques for sketching specific fabrics, like leather and tulle and denim. There's a bunch of different things that are covered. So this is kind of the meat of fashion illustration, how to sketch these different garments. If you're a designer, this is probably going to be a high interest to you. So here's an example of velvet in different sweaters and knitwear. So digital illustration and the defense of digital artwork. As digital art becomes more accessible and popular, the argument over whether or not digital art is quote unquote real art and whether it takes skill has emerged. As a similar argument over whether fashion is considered art has existed for years, digital fashion illustrators face double the heat. So this to me is a very silly argument, but it's definitely present. We'll talk about why I think that is not a valid point. And I argue that the existence of digital art tools have allowed more people to tap into their creativity than ever before. So I'm from the point of, if more people are drawing, that's a positive thing. Digital art tools are just tools. Exactly as a pencil is a drawing tool, tablets are drawing tools. Both are used in creating impressive artwork. Digital illustration is a skill that you must practice just like any other form of artwork. To me, digital illustration is actually a little bit more difficult than drawing. So I had gotten into digital illustration far after I'd been practicing traditional illustration. So for me, it was a bit of a learning curve. And there's a lot of things to learn, not only how to draw in it, but a few technical aspects. But with that said, you can create really impressive artwork with these digital tablets. A lot of people too might think that these apps are just apps that generate imagery for you. But when you're drawing on a software for illustration, you're drawing everything from scratch manually. So you still need to have foundational skills in drawing in some way. But it is a great way to practice. And it's, like I said, it's easy to travel with, and it's accessible to a few more people than lugging around a bunch of different art tools or buying several art tools to create one piece might be. These are a few examples of some digital art I've created recently. So as you can see, you can really create like a wide variety of different effects, all with one tablet. And for me, I have a stylus. Here's another bridal illustration, again, all done with the app Procreate, if you're familiar with it. And again, that is covered in the book. We have a digital chapter which outlines the basics of a few different drawing apps and explores how to get into that. And one of the reasons why I think a lot of people are gravitating towards digital work is because with one app or one software, you can create a wide variety of different techniques. And that's mostly due to extremely large collection on most of these apps of these brushes that imitate actual art tools. So you'll see here like the sketching tool and the ink tool and the calligraphy pen, they all look so similar to as they would look on paper. So you can do so many things to make it or manipulate it to look like the real thing. This is just a quick video of me sketching on this app. And a lot of people really enjoy this app because you can get into this meditative process when you're coloring in these drawings. And a lot of people have different coloring book pages they can download. And it's just a nice way to sit back at the end of the night and not think about anything and just enjoy. And that was another goal of my book too. I just wanted people to sit back and tap into their creativity and enjoy everything. Also in the book is I talk a little bit about incorporating backgrounds into your artwork. As I said, traditional fashion illustrations didn't really feature too many backgrounds, but there's nothing wrong with adding a little something into the background. In this case, I worked with a brand in Boston, so I wanted to incorporate those brownstones behind it, and I just used my markers in the same way that I would sketch the garments to illustrate the textures of one of the brownstones. Here's a few more examples of some full color, full background illustrations I've done. And while they're a little bit more time consuming, I really do like the effect. Another fun thing I play around with, if any of you are familiar with flat Stanleys, these are a more modern application of that. So I do these drawings and I take them with me on vacation or wherever I'm going to travel, and I cut them out and I hold them up in front of a scene. And a lot of people in real life will see me and go, what the heck is she doing? But they have this really stunning effect to them. So it's like a way for me to travel with my art and a fun way to explore new areas. So this shot specifically was on Fifth Avenue in New York during the holiday season. These are a few shots from Bermuda, another place I like to travel. And like I said, I'm so inspired by travel, and where a lot of my work is inspired by my travels, it's a fun way to merge the two. A few shots from Paris. A few more various ones. On the left, you'll see the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, or I love the gardens there. So the specific illustration was inspired by that. And then in the middle in San Francisco, and on the right, this was inspired by a popular TV series, which I'm sure a few of you might have caught on to. There are two girls at the Met. So this is an example of the chapter on backgrounds and how you can incorporate backgrounds into your work. Modern Fashion Illustration is available at the Thomas Crane Public Library. So you can go visit it today and start to explore your creative journey. And again, I wanted to thank the Thomas Crane Public Library for hosting tonight's event and for having me. It's been such a pleasure. And I'm really excited to see what you all create in your new journeys, whether you're returning to artwork for the first time in a long time or you haven't discovered it yet. I always say that everybody is an artist. And because when I talk to people, I'll ask them, oh, do you create artwork? And they'll say, yeah, but I'm not an artist. And I think that if you're having a creative thought or anything, that qualifies you to be an artist. So always give yourself enough credit, and you'll discover what you love. Here's a few of my contact informations. If you ever have any questions or want to get in touch with me, I'm happy to chat. And thank you again. I'm going to end my share screen here and turn it over to you guys.
So Holly will be taking questions now. I actually do have some from social media if you guys would like to put any questions you have in the chat here. The one patron wanted to know, do you prefer drawing by hand or are you starting to lean more towards drawing digitally now?
I will always prefer drawing with paper and pen or pencil, whatever the medium is. I really enjoy that tactile experience. And it was a moment of heavy resistance for me to get into digital artwork. Partially, I think, because of that stigma that a lot of digital artists face of this is not real art, like I spoke about earlier. I do love the convenience of digital artwork. When I'm traveling through the airport specifically, you'll see behind me I have about 300 markers. And when I go through TSA, they have to open and uncap each marker for security. So the digital tablet that I work with, specifically the iPad Pro, makes it really easy to have everything in one device and just pick up and go.
Speaking of the digital artwork, someone wanted to know if you can elaborate on the digital tablet software that you use, Procreate, what that's like. And they also wanted to know if it was an Apple-only product or if it's available on Android tablets.
Yes. So the app I use is called Procreate. It's a one-time download fee of $9.99, which is quite appealing when you compare it to a lot of other softwares for illustration. It's exclusive to the iPad Pro and the iOS system, unfortunately. So you would need to have an Apple. I misspoke. I apologize. There are other Apple iPads that work with it, but it is an Apple exclusive product. There are a lot of alternatives if you have I know a lot of people have Surface tablets. I think there are a few other alternatives to that, but Procreate is leading in the software for illustration, at least for tablets right now.
Okay. And then Carla had asked what work you've done for Living Proof.
Yeah, so years ago, Living Proof, a Cambridge-based company, I did a fun campaign with them for Halloween, and we had several different hair and fashion looks for each decade, and I sketched a girl inspired by each of those, and then it was paired with a corresponding hair product. And I've done a few similar things for a few different hair products in that capacity. And it's really fun to translate product into drawing. And I think that it's a theme that a lot of illustrators now are doing. And it's a great way for us to partner with brands because it's a way for the brand to set this creative way of showing their work that's not just a photograph of it. So I certainly appreciate it, and I'm very grateful for all those opportunities.
And then Eve had asked, do you have any tips to help one become profitable or how to make a living off of fashion illustrations?
Yeah, so certainly start, if you're comfortable with it and you haven't already, start an Instagram or some sort of social media displaying your work. A very popular method right now that I was a bit late to is TikTok. There are so many artists on TikTok that are selling their artwork at masses every day just by these videos. They're quite consumable. People love watching video. So if you are able to share the video process of your work, that's a really great way to get seen by brands that will want to partner with you. And they admire first your skill, but if you're able to provide a small audience behind it, that's certainly helpful. It's not essential that you have an audience, of course. I think your artwork and your skills will speak for you. And then just if you're able to sell your prints, I use Etsy to do that. But people always want to buy your artwork too and hang it in their homes. So offering your work on as many places as you can is a great way to get some income started on that.
And how integral for you, or are you finding social media to be with fashion illustration, and how, what other ways have you incorporated social media into that?
Social media is my number one source of income for everything. I'd say it's over 90%. And even that's a little low. All of my clients find me through social media. I do get a lot of traction when we were able to attend in-person events. I loved networking events, and that's a great way too, just word of mouth. But it's certainly an important piece, at least for the modern fashion illustrator.
Okay. And then, so you've worked with major brands like Tresemme and Barney's. What would a pitch to those companies look like for modern fashion illustration?
Yeah, so I'm lucky in recent years that I haven't had to pitch just by the nature of how my work process goes. But when I have pitched brands or when I'm looking for new representation or, if I have a question for a publisher, it's always best to keep it short and sweet, because you have to think about these brands that are going through thousands of emails a day, quite potentially. So the first thing you're going to want to do is research the company quite a bit, find out who's at the head of their either social media department or their marketing department. Find their contact, write a very brief email, maybe attach a few examples of your work, but the shorter the better. So in those short words, you want to make sure that you're saying what counts. So I would say something like, I'm an illustrator, this is my audience, and here's my work. Just something very short and sweet, but make sure you're offering what you can give them, why you're appealing to them, and what you can bring them that's unique to these other people that are probably emailing them too.
And then even past that, once you are able to start engaging with these brands, how much is your own input versus how much is the input of the corporation that you're dealing with? How does that relationship work?
I've been quite lucky that the brands that I work with have hired me because they like my work and they appreciate my input on everything. So it's pretty much half and half, but usually we're on the same page. If I see something that's not working or they see something that's not working, it's really easy to hop on a phone call and discuss that out. There have been a few instances where as people who might not specifically be artists themselves, I kind of have to act as the art director for them, but it's been pretty rare. And even if I usually offer some gentle, constructive criticism, and they're almost always open to that. So that process is really smooth.
And what do you find personally? I've talked to some artists who always have like one thing that they struggle with to like draw. It's like the one, like my grandmother was an artist, she could never draw hands. Is there one thing that you struggle with trying to draw that still to this day you have to spend a little bit more time on?
I was going to say hands. So it's so funny that you say that. I see so many artists that completely master this, but with my fashion illustrations, actually, you can even see here, I try to hide the hands as much as possible. So her hands are kind of tucked behind a dress on one side, and then I struggled through this one. I don't know what it is about hands that are so difficult to draw. It could be just the shape there. When I go through the instruction in the book, you'll see the chapter I cover this, and I tell people to think about the palm itself as one shape, and then each joint I have as a circle. So if you draw 5 circles and then the tip, you can kind of just connect them and make the hands that way. It's easier said than done when you're applying it to different hand positions. So there's a lot of pictures on my camera roll of me trying to get a reference shot of myself. That might be holding a glass of wine like that. So I act as my own model.
You've just asked if you currently have or plan on having a network or community that helps to promote other artists.
Yes, so I currently have a community on Facebook. We're known as the Creator Community. And we're a network of, I think we're about 3,000 artists now. And we share our work, we share our struggles. We get feedback from each other. If there is a client that emails us and we don't know how to respond, we post it securely. We don't reveal any names, but we just say, hey, what would you say to this person who is asking me for a bit more than I think might be fair to myself? So I'm really grateful for that community. I've learned a lot from them, and anyone is welcome to join that group too.
More questions. How long does it take you to typically create a single look when drawing something out? Do you go through a lot of iterations?
Yes. I've gotten pretty good at, if I think I mess up, I have found ways to fix it, which has helped me save a bit of paper as I've matured as an artist. But each drawing takes anywhere from 8 minutes to an hour. I say 8 minutes on the low end because when I'm doing live sketching events, the client typically wants it to go quick, so I can draw a lot of people. But in my own time, I like spending a lot more time on a single illustration so I can get a lot of details in it. The cover girl, for example, she took about a half an hour, so somewhere in between. But there's no when you're making artwork, especially for yourself, there's really no rush in it. I know a lot of artists feel pressured to work really quickly, but it's better to slow down and just enjoy the process, I think.
Is there any one fashion icon who really inspires your art, or like who you look to when you're like, I want to make something today? Oh, I'll see what this person might have worn at the last event or something.
Not specifically a person, but the designer Elie Saab has informed my work quite a bit. He's a Lebanese designer, and he features a lot of beautiful sheer fabric with embellishment. And he's one of the first couture designers that I discovered when I was studying fashion illustration, or studying the art of fashion illustration as a studio art major in college. And his work is just incredible. The bridal gown I showed you on screen as the digital illustration was inspired from one of his garments. And I just get very excited when he displays his work for Couture Week, which happens twice every year. This year it's been digital, so and I haven't myself gotten to Couture Week. I would love to be there in person, but they show it online every year, so it's a great way to find inspiration. If you're an artist that loves fashion, there's so many ways to watch fashion shows online where we can't be there in person right now, and I just stream those and find inspiration from them. And yeah, it's a really fun way to, especially if you're having artist block.
Yeah, I love Elie Saab's work. I think all of his stuff is classically beautiful and enduring. Mm-hmm. Eve wanted to know if you have any tips, or does the book cover how to help one speed through an illustration for a live event?
I haven't covered that in this book, but I'm happy to talk about a few of my tips now. So prior to the event itself, I do little maps on the paper of where the people are going to appear. So I'm not guessing in that moment exactly where it's going to go on the paper. And if you're not familiar with live illustration, I think Eve might be based on the question, which is great. But if you're not familiar with live illustration, a lot of brands will work with fashion illustrators to sketch guest attendees of these events. And we're in a very tight time crunch, even more so than I think caricaturists might have been. So we have about 8 minutes to sketch the people that are arriving at these events and then give them the illustration. So Eve, I do that mapping, and then I'm very upfront with the brand, and I say, in these sketches that I'm doing in 8 minutes, they're going to be gestural expressions. They're not going to look like my fully developed fashion illustrations. And you will find that the customer that's coming to you or the attendee will love whatever you create. And they're just appreciative to see your work unraveling in front of them. And then it's them in the subject. So they love the customization of it. And then they get to take it home at the end of the night. So I wouldn't stress too much on fitting it all in. But do the mapping ahead of time, and it takes practice. So you can time yourself ahead of time too. That might help.
And someone wants to know if you could mention the names of the pens that you use to paint when you're doing by hand.
Yes, I will show you. So these are called Copic markers. They come in a few different varieties. They sell them at Michael's, but it's a little bit cheaper to get them online at certain places. And they have two ends. So one of them is a chisel end shaped like this, and the other one is a brush tip end. And I favor this one because it's a more painterly effect when it goes on the paper.
And that seems to be the brand you've been using for a very long time, right?
Yes. I've had this set since I was in college, and it's been about 10 years since I purchased my first one.
Someone wanted to know if the book is available at any library or just Thomas Crane. You'd have to check with your local libraries, because I think we have some people watching from outside of the state of Massachusetts on our streaming services. I will say, as someone who works in a library, if your library doesn't have Holly's book, you can always suggest that they add it to their collection as an additional purchase if it's something that you're interested in. So you can call your local library's reference department and see if they can add it to their collection. Speaking of the book, what is next for Holly Nichols after publishing her first book? Is there going to be a follow-up book? Are we going to try something new altogether?
Yeah, I'm in hopes that there is a follow-up book. I'm hoping particularly for one devoted to digital illustration. So that's my goal. But more immediately, I'm releasing some classes that are a companion to the book. And there'll be more master courses inspired by the book, but they go a little bit more in depth. So I'm really looking forward to that. Like I said, there's nothing I love more than teaching. So I'm quite excited to get those going.
Okay. And I think someone had asked online earlier about your in-person classes. Is there any plans to be starting those up anytime soon, or are you going to be doing virtual ones?
More immediately virtual. I think we're still kind of working around COVID and complications around that. So hopefully when we're in a better space, I'd say maybe a few months from now, I am really excited to get working with people in person again, but more immediately virtual.
And then I think I have one last question. If no one else in the room has one. Someone wants to know, what other work did you do before going into fashion illustration that maybe led you down this path?
Yeah, I actually, my senior thesis was on children's book illustration. So my work has always been very illustrative, even when I was painting, and a teacher pointed out that to me. Because a lot of artists, if any other artists are listening now, I think one of the biggest things we struggle with is finding our style. And so when I was dealing with that, I showed all my work, I laid it all out to a professor, and I said, can you help me find some common thread through this? Because we're staring at our work all the time, so it's hard to see. But I had a college professor look at my work and look at an oil painting I was doing, and then a children's illustration I had done. And they said, all of your work features an outline of all of your subjects, whether you're working with oil or, a marker. And so my work leading from oil to those children's illustrations that I was doing with watercolor, and a lot of those children's illustrations were fashion inspired, led me to discovering fashion illustration and focusing in on that.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for joining us tonight to talk about your work and your brand new book. Again, you can check that out at the Thomas Crane Library. It should be available now, or you can purchase it at any of the major book retailers online. Thank you so much for joining us, Holly. This was really great. As someone who really loves high fashion, just going through the book and seeing some of the illustrations of pieces that are very recognizable if you follow fashion, I thought some of the pieces were just stunning. I think you did a great job on putting the work together. And we're so proud of the work that you've done and representing Quincy well. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it.